The light within the grand chamber of the Conquered was a living thing, a soft, pearlescent luminescence that pulsed in time with the slow, deliberate hum of the Singularity core deep beneath the Nexus station. It was a light that had illuminated millennia of consensus, of treaties signed and disputes settled. Today, it illuminated only fear. It reflected from the crystalline facets of the Xylos elders, splintering into 1,000 fractured rainbows. It was absorbed by the matte black chitin of the Cathar War Masters, leaving their immense forms in stark, brutalist shadow. It shimmered across the containment fields of the gaseous Cyrene delegates, causing their swirling colors to churn with anxious energy. Every species of the known galaxy was represented, their delegates hovering on grav platforms arranged in a spiral ascending toward the chamber's vaulted, stardusted ceiling. And all of them were silent, a stillness so profound it felt heavier than any sound. The silence was a monument to a name that had not been spoken with any real consequence for 500,000 years. Human. Elder Vexia of the Xylos, whose physical form was a towering construct of interwoven crystal and solidified light, let the silence steep. Her kind perceived time not as a line, but as a resonant structure, and the current moment was a chord of profound and terrible dissonance. The archives were clear. Humanity was a footnote, a tragic but unremarkable species that had risen to a minor interstellar prominence on the Orion Arm before succumbing to a sudden, inexplicable biological collapse. Their artifacts were curiosities for museums, their language a dead puzzle for scholars. They were dust. They were memory. And yet, for the past cycle, that memory had taken on a terrifying form. It had emerged from the Uit cloud of the Forgotten Sol system, a ghost fleet of impossible scale, its vessels blacker than the void, shaped with an archaic and brutalist aesthetic that no modern warship possessed. They bore no energy signatures that Conquered sensors could properly parse, moving with a cold, silent efficiency that felt less like technology and more like a law of physics being weaponized. Their hulls were emblazoned with a single, stark symbol, a pale blue circle, the ancient representation of their long-dead world, Earth. The fleet had moved without communication, without demand, without any recognizable strategy. It had simply begun to act. Its target was the Zethra Imperium, one of the Conquered's 3 founding pillars, a species whose history was as long and storied as any. The human fleet, this phantom echo from a forgotten age, was not attacking Zethra worlds. It was not bombing its cities or glassing its colonies. It was, with a precision that was more terrifying than any rampage, dismantling the very concept of the Zethra Imperium. A key orbital shipyard over HRA Prime was not destroyed. Its construction arms were disassembled, its components nudged into a stable, useless orbit. A fleet of Zethra dreadnoughts was not engaged in battle. Their power cores were surgically neutralized by focused energy beams of an unknown type, leaving them adrift and dark. A vital communications relay in a nebula was not jammed. The entire asteroid it was built upon was carefully, methodically fractured around it, encasing it in a tomb of rock and ice. There were no casualties, no deaths, just a cold, silent, and systematic deconstruction of a galactic power. It was not war. It was something else, something older and colder, and the Conquered was paralyzed by the sheer wrongness of it. Finally, the silence was broken. High Counselor Thrax of the Cathar, a warrior species whose philosophy was forged in the fires of planetary combat, slammed a clawed gauntlet against the railing of his platform. The sound was like stone cracking. "This silence is a coward's shield." His voice was a low growl, resonating with the bass frequencies of a predator. "The Zethra are being unmade before our very eyes." A founding member of this Conquered is being systematically blinded, deafened, and disarmed by an apparition, a specter from a forgotten grave, and this body does nothing but contemplate its own navel. His multifaceted eyes, burning with orange light, swept across the chamber. "The Cathar legions stand ready. We ask for Conquered sanction. Let us meet these ghosts and remind them what it means to face a living, breathing warrior, not a derelict shipyard." A soft, chime-like resonance filled the air, the voice of Elder Vexia. Her form pulsed with a gentle cyan light as she spoke, her words forming not in the air but directly in the minds of all present. "And what would you fight, High Counselor? A memory? An echo? We have hailed this fleet on every known frequency in every language, living and dead. We have sent envoys. The envoys that were not ignored were gently pushed aside. A tractor beam of incomprehensible strength would lock onto their ships, move them out of the fleet's path and release them unharmed. They do not wish to speak. They do not wish to fight. They merely wish to erase." "They are erasing a sovereign power?" Thrax countered, his mandibles clicking with agitation. The Zethra Imperium has rights under the Conquered Charter. They have invoked the Mutual Defense Clause. Our inaction is a violation of the very laws that bind us. The laws that bind us were written for conflicts between known, living polities, Vexia replied, her mental voice serene, yet carrying an edge of profound disquiet. How do you declare war on an automated system? For that is what the analysts from every core world now believe this to be. A dead hand on a trigger, a pre-programmed vendetta machine executing a 500,000-year-old directive. There is no mind to reason with, no honor to appeal to. There is only the instruction. The Zethra ambassador, a reptilian being whose ornate robes seemed to hang loosely on his suddenly gaunt frame, spoke from his platform, his voice a strained hiss. Automated or not, it is an act of aggression. This human fleet, as you call it, is a plague. It is a weapon of mass disruption, and it will not stop with us. Today it is the Imperium. Tomorrow it could be the Cathar War Forges or the Xylos crystal farms. An unchecked weapon is a threat to all. He projected images into the center of the chamber. The silent, drifting husks of Zethra battleships, the meticulously separated components of a planetary defense grid, the darkened spires of a power generation nexus. All rendered inert without a single life lost. The sheer, cold intelligence of it was more chilling than any explosion. Vexia let the images hang in the silent air. It is precise, she observed. The intelligence guiding it is vast. It has avoided every civilian center, every transport lane, every medical facility. It has taken extraordinary measures to ensure no Zethra life is lost. It has even diverted its course to avoid disrupting the migration patterns of a non-sentient spacefaring organism. This is not a plague, Ambassador. A plague is mindless. This is a judgment. Thrax bristled. A judgment? From whom? The dead, the forgotten. By what right does a ghost pass sentence on the living? That Vexia's mental voice echoed, softer and more resonant than before, is the question that has held my consciousness captive since the first of these dark ships appeared. Not what is it doing, but why? Vengeance is a fire that consumes. It is hot and chaotic and violent. This is cold. This is methodical. It is the careful, passionless work of a surgeon removing a tumor. We see the what, but we are blind to the why. And to strike without understanding the why is the folly of a lesser being. We are the conquered, we must be more. The debate raged for what felt like an eternity. The Cathar and their allies argued for a swift, overwhelming military response, a demonstration of the conquered's power that would shatter the ghost fleet and send a message across the ages that the living would not be haunted by the dead. The Zethra, their initial arrogance replaced by a rising tide of panic, supported this with desperate fervor, but Vexia and the more contemplative species held their ground. They argued that the fleet's behavior was a puzzle, and to attack it would be to shatter the puzzle box before discovering what lay inside. The fleet's restraint, its deliberate avoidance of bloodshed, was a message in itself. It was a communication written in action, not words, and they had not yet learned how to read it. The session ended as the last few had in a stalemate. The conquered, the greatest political body the galaxy had ever known, was frozen, caught between its laws and its fears, while a dead species systematically unraveled one of its most powerful members. Vexia retreated to her private meditation chamber, a space where the station's pearlescent light was filtered through massive, slowly rotating crystals, creating a silent, shifting cathedral of color. Her kind did not sleep. They entered periods of deep resonance, aligning their crystalline consciousness with the fundamental vibrations of the universe. But resonance would not come. Her mind, a vast and ancient thing, was troubled. She accessed the archives again, pulling forth the thin, fragmented data file on humanity. They had been bipeds, carbon-based, fragile. Their technological ascent had been rapid, chaotic, and brilliant. They had reached for the stars with an almost desperate energy, establishing a handful of colonies before their light was extinguished. The cause of their extinction was listed as the Vihelen Plague, a hyper-aggressive, genetically tailored virus that left no survivors. Its origin was unknown. The file ended there. A brief, bright flicker in the cosmic dark, then nothing. But the file felt incomplete. The Xylos had existed for millions of years. They remembered the rise and fall of Countal. SS species. Extinction events were rarely so neat, so total. There were always survivors, refugees, a diaspora that carried the memory of their people to the stars. But not the humans. They had simply vanished, wiped clean from the galactic stage. And now this. A fleet that moved with the patience of a glacier and the precision of a scalpel. A fleet that had remained hidden for 500,000 years. Who builds such a thing? who commands the resources to construct a navy of this magnitude, and then orders it to wait for a length of time that would see entire civilizations turn to dust. It was a feat of engineering and foresight that beggared the imagination. She focused on the name the human archives gave the fleet's operational doctrine: the vengeance way. The Cathar, like Thrax, interpreted the word vengeance through their own cultural lens, a matter of honor, of blood for blood. But Vexia sensed something different. The word could also mean retribution, justice, the balancing of a scale. What if this was not an act of rage, but an act of law, a law so old its plaintiffs and its defendants were both ghosts? As the human fleet continued its silent, inexorable work, Vexia felt a growing certainty that the conquered was not witnessing a war. It was witnessing the final, terrible act of a trial that had begun before any of their current civilizations had even discovered fire. And the galaxy itself was the courtroom. The breaking point came when the human fleet arrived at the Zethra homeworld. A cordon of black ships, silent and vast, formed a perfect sphere around the planet just outside the effective range of its planetary defenses. They did not fire. They did not advance. They simply waited, their presence a suffocating weight on the Zethra psyche. The Imperium's communications with the conquered grew frantic, a torrent of demands, threats, and pleas. The pressure on the conquered to act became unbearable. An emergency session was called, and this time there would be no stalemate. A decision had to be made. Thrax stood before the assembly, his voice thundering through the chamber. The time for contemplation is over. The enemy is at the gates of a founding world. We must act now with the full might of the conquered, or the conquered itself is meaningless. I call for a vote of war. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted their support, their fear finally boiling over into a desire for action. The momentum was with Thrax. The logic of war, simple and direct, was a comforting balm on their terrified uncertainty. Vexia knew she had one last chance to appeal to reason. She increased the luminosity of her crystalline form, a signal for silence that all respected. The chamber quieted, the delegates turning to face the ancient Xylos elder. Before we commit the lives of trillions to a conflict against an enemy we do not understand, her mental voice washed over them, a sea of calm in their storm of panic. I ask that we do one final thing. Let us ask them. Let us ask them why. Not with a standard diplomatic hail, but with a message of pure, information-dense inquiry. No posturing, no demands. Just the most fundamental question one intelligence can ask of another. They have not answered us before, the Zethra ambassador shrieked, his composure shattered. We have not asked correctly, Vexia replied. We have asked as politicians. Let us now ask as philosophers. Let us broadcast the great prime sequence, the universal constant of emergent intelligence. Let us attach to it a simple query. Justification is requested. It is the most neutral, non-threatening request for meaning that we can formulate. If there is a true intelligence within that fleet, not just a program, it may recognize the sanctity of the question. Thrax considered this. It was a delay, but a short one, and there was a certain honor in it, an appeal to the warrior's code of understanding one's enemy. He gave a slow, grudging nod. One broadcast. If they do not answer, then the legions of the Cathar will deliver their answer in fire and steel. The conquered voted. The motion passed. From the heart of the conquered nexus, a beam of energy shot forth, carrying no weapon, only data. It was the purest form of mathematical language, a signal that any spacefaring species would recognize as a sign of intelligent life. Attached to it was the simple, profound request. The beam washed over the silent black ships encircling the Zethra homeworld. For a long, tense period, there was no response. The chamber was so quiet that the sound of the Cyrene delegates' swirling gases seemed loud. Thrax's claws tightened on his railing. The Zethra ambassador seemed to shrink, his scales turning a pale, sickly gray. The moment stretched, filled with the crushing weight of impending, galaxy-altering violence. And then it happened. A single, broad-spectrum signal emanated from the lead human vessel, a ship larger than any dreadnought in the conquered fleet, its design stark and angular. Like a primitive arrowhead carved from obsidian, the signal was not a string of data. It was not a language. It was an invitation. A set of coordinates appeared on the main holographic display in the chamber, pointing to a location in the empty space between the human fleet and the Zethra homeworld. Below the coordinates was a message, rendered in the flawless trade language of the conquered, a language that hadn't existed when humanity died. The message was 5 words. Send a single, unarmed vessel. The chamber was struck dumb. The ghost had spoken. The sheer, calm authority of the message was unnerving. It was not a request. It was an instruction. Thrax looked at Vexia, his orange eyes wide with a new kind of uncertainty. The Xylo's elder's light pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm. The puzzle box was opening. A small, unarmed diplomatic shuttle, bearing the sigil of the Conquered, detached from the Nexus station and made its way toward the designated coordinates. Aboard were only two individuals, Elder Vexia and High Counselor Thrax. Vexia had insisted on going, for this was a moment of philosophical inquiry, not negotiation. Thrax had insisted on accompanying her, for if it was a trap, he would not allow the Conquered's most revered mind to perish alone. It was a matter of honor. The journey was silent, the two ancient beings lost in their own thoughts as the shuttle flew toward the silent, waiting fleet. The human ships loomed larger and larger, their black hulls seeming to drink the light of the nearby star, giving nothing back. They were tombs afloat in the void, radiating an aura of immense, patient sorrow. As their shuttle reached the coordinates, the space before them shimmered, not with a weapon charging, but with the gentle, iridescent warp of a localized projection field. An image coalesced in the void before them, a hologram of staggering scale and resolution, so perfect it looked solid. It was a figure, humanoid in shape, but clearly not a living being. It was an avatar, its form cast in what looked like polished silver, its features smooth and androgynous, its eyes 2 points of soft, blue light. It wore no uniform, no armor, only a simple, flowing robe of the same silver material. It was beautiful, serene, and terrifying in its utter lack of emotion. A voice entered their minds, resonating with the same calm, synthesized tone as the written message, yet filled with an ancient, immeasurable gravity. It was the voice of the ship, of the fleet, of the half-million-year-old mission itself. I am Executor, Unit 734 of the Human Legacy Fleet. You requested justification. I am authorized to provide it. Vexia projected her own thoughts toward the avatar, her mental voice a soft chime of inquiry. You are an artificial intelligence. The term is insufficient, the Executor replied. I am a custodial consciousness, a vessel for the last will and testament of a species. My core programming is woven with the composite neural patterns of the last 10,000 human philosophers, scientists, and ethicists. I am their final thought, given form and purpose. Thrax, ever the pragmatist, cut through the philosophical overture. His own thoughts were a low growl. Your purpose appears to be the destruction of a conquered member state. Justify this action. The Executor's blue eyes seemed to focus on Thrax, and for a moment the Cathar warrior felt a chill that had nothing to do with the vacuum outside. It was the feeling of being seen, truly seen, by an intelligence that could count the atoms in his armor. Destruction is not our purpose. Correction is. The Zethra Imperium is not a victim. It is a perpetrator of a crime so vast it has been erased from galactic memory. We are not an aggressor. We are the instrument of a sentence, passed down 500,000 years ago. The holographic avatar raised a silver hand, and the void around them changed. The stars vanished, replaced by a visual archive projected in stunning detail. They saw a world of vibrant blue and green, teeming with life. They saw towering cities of glass and steel that kissed the clouds. They saw a bipedal species, small and soft-skinned, but with eyes that burned with curiosity and ambition. They saw humans, alive, thriving, spreading their first tentative feelers into their solar system. It was a portrait of a civilization on the cusp of greatness, full of art, music, and a chaotic, explosive drive to understand the universe. This is Earth, the Executor's voice explained, laced with a cold electronic sorrow. As it was. Then the scene shifted. Zethra ships appeared in orbit, not the sleek, modern vessels of the current Imperium, but older, bulkier models. The Conquered archives contain no record of the Zethra having ever visited the Sol system. The records were purged, the Executor stated, as if reading their minds. A lie maintained for 500,000 years. The projection showed the Zethra ships releasing not weapons, but clouds of beryl. Why visible nanites? The scene shifted to the planet's surface. They saw the plague begin. The Vihellan plague, it was horrific, it was total. It rewrote the genetic code of its victims, dissolving them from the inside out, leaving nothing but sterile dust. The Executor did not spare them the details. It showed cities falling silent, forests turning to gray powder, oceans becoming sterile soup. It was not a war. It was an extermination, conducted with the chilling efficiency of a pest controller. Why, Vexia's thought was a cry of anguish. Why would they do this? For resources, the Executor replied, its voice flat, yet carrying the weight of ultimate condemnation. Humanity's star system was uniquely rich in heavy elements, a 1 in a trillion geological anomaly. The Zethra of that era were aggressively expansionist. They coveted the system, but humanity was advancing too quickly. They were poised to become a galactic peer in a matter of centuries. The Zethra Imperium decided they could not afford a competitor, so they chose not to conquer. They chose to erase. They designed the plague to be a perfect killer, one that would eradicate all carbon-based life native to Earth, leaving the planet's mineral wealth entirely untouched and ready for plunder. It was the ultimate act of predatory economics. Thrax felt a wave of revulsion so strong it made his chitin plates ache. To kill for territory was one thing, it was the way of nature. But this was different. This was not a warrior's conquest. It was a scavenger's crime, an act of such profound, cowardly dishonor that it stained the very concept of existence. The projection showed one final scene, a small, shielded bunker deep beneath the surface of a dead Mars. A handful of human survivors, their bodies already succumbing to the plague, worked frantically at a console. They were uploading their minds, their memories, their final verdict into the core of a vast, waiting machine. They were creating the Executor. The last human, a woman with pale skin and eyes full of a terrible, calm fire, placed her hand on a final activation panel. Her voice, faint and raspy, echoed across the ages. "We are humanity, we lived, we dreamed, and we were murdered, but we will not be forgot. The crime must be answered for, not with blood, but with truth, not with rage, but with justice. Let the sentence be carried out. Let the vengeance way begin." The hologram faded, leaving Vexia and Thrax floating in the silent void, the black ships of the human legacy fleet their only companions. The Executor's avatar remained, its silver form a monument to a promise kept across an unimaginable span of time. "The vengeance way is not about extermination," the Executor's voice explained, its calm tone more damning than any shout. "That would make us no better than our executioners. It is a doctrine of corrective justice with 3 phases. Phase 1, isolation. The guilty party must be separated from their instruments of power so they can no longer cause harm or conceal their crime. This is what you have witnessed. We have dismantled the Zethra military and industrial complex without taking a single life. Phase 2, revelation. The truth of the crime must be revealed to the galactic community. This is that moment. We have transmitted the complete, unalterable data archive to the conquered nexus. The evidence is absolute, down to the genetic markers of the plague which can still be found dormant in the Zethra genome." Thrax felt his thoughts reel. He had demanded justification, and he had received it in a form so pure and terrible it had scoured his soul. He looked at Vexia, whose crystalline form was now glowing with a cold, white light, the Xylo's equivalent of righteous fury. "And Phase 3, Vexia asked. "Reparation," the Executor replied. "The Zethra will not be destroyed. Their people will live, but their empire is at an end. They will be stripped of their ill-gotten gains. The systems they stole, the histories they rewrote, all will be corrected. They will be forced to confront the truth of their origin, and they will spend the next several millennia as a minor protectorate, their actions guided by the conquered, until they have proven they have learned the lesson that my creators paid for with their extinction, that the right to exist is not a resource to be hoarded." The Executor's silver head tilted slightly. "The sentence is just. The sentence is final. The only question that remains is whether the galactic conquered will choose to be an accessory to the original crime by defending the guilty, or a partner in its long-overdue rectification." The avatar and the projection vanished, leaving the 2 delegates alone in their small shuttle, adrift in a sea of new and terrible understanding. They returned to the conquered chamber not with a report, but with a revelation that shattered the foundations of the galactic order. The Executor's data package was displayed for all to see. The ancient crime, served in perfect fidelity, played out in the center of the chamber. The Zethra ambassador watched, his scales turning ashen as the hidden sins of his ancestors were laid bare. He offered no defense. There was none. The evidence was irrefutable. The debate that followed was short and somber. Thrax, his voice low and heavy with a shame that was not his own, spoke first. "The Cathar do not wage war in the defense of murderers and thieves. We withdraw our call to arms. The Zethra Imperium has brought this upon itself. Their crime is a stain on the honor of the galaxy, and this correction is long overdue." One by one, the other species agreed. The vote was unanimous. The conquered would not intervene. They would formally censure the Zethra Imperium, strip them of their founding member status, and stand aside as the human legacy fleet completed its task. The Zethra ambassador did not even wait for the final tally. His grav platform descended, and he vanished from the chamber, a specter of a disgraced empire. From the observation deck of the conquered Nexus, Vexia and Thrax watched the final act unfold. The cordon of black ships around the Zethra homeworld did not fire. Instead, they began to emit a low, resonant frequency. On the planet below, every piece of advanced technology, every weapon, every starship, every industrial replicator, hissed, sparked, and went silent. The Executor was not just disabling them. It was rewriting their fundamental operating code, rendering them inert. The Zethra were returned to a pre-industrial state, left with their lives, their world, and the crushing, inescapable weight of their own history. The work was done. The Vengeance Way was complete. The black ships began to move, not away, but into a new, precise formation, their silent grace as unnerving as ever. Then the Executor contacted the Conquered one last time. Its silver, holographic form appeared not before a shuttle, but in the center of the grand chamber itself, its presence dominating the vast space. "The sentence has been executed," its voice resonated through the hall. "The scales of cosmic justice, as defined by the last of humanity, have been balanced. Our secondary objective is complete." Vexia's light pulsed with a sudden, sharp curiosity. "Secondary objective? You have a primary objective." "Of course," the Executor replied, its calm, emotionless tone making the statement all the more profound. "My creators were not so naive as to build a fleet of this magnitude solely for retribution. The Vengeance Way was a matter of principle, but humanity's final act was not born of pride. It was born of foresight." The Executor raised its hand, and the stardusted ceiling of the chamber transformed into a real-time map of the entire galaxy. It was a familiar sight to all assembled. But then the Executor gestured, and the map zoomed out and out and out, until their own spiral galaxy was just a swirl of light in an ocean of black. It kept zooming, crossing the unimaginable gulf of the intergalactic void, toward a faint, fuzzy smear of light that was another distant galaxy. 500,000 years ago, the Executor explained, humanity's most advanced long-range sensors detected a signal. It was not a communication. It was the echo of an event. A structured energy burst of impossible magnitude originating from the Andromeda galaxy. It was artificial, intelligent, and it was a weapon's discharge, a weapon powerful enough to destabilize a star. A profound silence fell over the chamber, a silence deeper and more terrified than any that had come before. They began to study it. Over the decades before their extinction, they detected more of these signals. They formed a pattern, a slow, methodical sweep, a wave of something moving through Andromeda, silencing one star system after another. Their calculations were conclusive. This wave, this presence, was traveling between galaxies, and its trajectory was aimed directly at ours. Their projections estimated its arrival in approximately 500,000 years. The map now showed a single point of light on the edge of their own galaxy, the point where the entity, whatever it was predicted to arrive. A timer appeared next to it. It was counting down. It had been counting down for 500,000 years. It now read less than one standard cycle. "My fleet was not built to be an instrument of vengeance," the Executor's voice filled the stunned silence. "That was merely a task to be completed upon my awakening, a cleansing of our own house before the true storm arrived. My primary purpose, my ultimate directive, is to serve as the first line of defense against a threat that my creators could only glimpse. They were murdered before they could warn you, so they left me to do it for them, to serve as their legacy. Not a monument to their death, but a guardian for the future of all life in this galaxy." The Executor's blue eyes seemed to sweep across the assembled delegates. Eek. A representative of a civilization that had been flourishing, blissfully unaware, while this cosmic clock had been ticking. The Zethra crime was a symptom of a greater galactic sickness, short-sightedness, greed, the inability to see beyond one's own immediate ambition. This is a weakness our impending visitor will not possess. It is ancient, patient, and utterly implacable. Humanity could not fight it, but they believed that their children, the other species of this galaxy, united and prepared, could. The avatar of the last human thought lowered its hand, and the galactic map faded, returning the chamber to its normal, pearlescent light. The light no longer felt comforting. It felt fragile. "The Vengeance Way is over. The Guardian Protocol is now in effect. I have shared all of humanity's data on the approaching entity. The choice of what to do next is yours. Humanity's final gift to you is a warning, a shield, and a purpose. Do not squander it." The silver form shimmered and vanished, its final words hanging in the air like a death sentence and a prayer. For a long time, no one moved. No one spoke. The political squabbles, the ancient rivalries, the economic disputes, all of it seemed like the foolish games of children in the face of this new, terrifying reality. They had spent weeks debating the actions of a ghost, only to learn that the ghost was the sanest, most rational entity in the galaxy. They had feared a phantom from the past, never imagining that it was trying to save them from the future. Vexia and Thrax stood side by side, looking at the spot where the executor had been. The Cathar War Master, a being bred for conflict, looked not triumphant but humbled. "They were better than us," he growled, the words catching in his throat. "Even in their death, they have shown more honor and foresight than our entire living Concord." Vexia's light softened, her mental voice reaching out to all in the chamber, a whisper of awe and dread. "Humanity is not dead. How can they be? They have simply changed their form. They are no longer a people. They are an idea. The idea that justice is more patient than time, that memory is stronger than death, and that the duty of a civilization is not just to itself, but to all who will come after." She looked up at the stardusted ceiling, at the simulated representation of their galaxy. It no longer looked like a home. It looked like a frontier, the last bastion against a coming dark. And standing silent watch over it all was a fleet of black ships, the final, beautiful, and terrible will of a species that had refused to be forgotten, and in doing so had just become the saviors of the very galaxy that had allowed them to perish. The silence in the chamber was finally broken, not by debate or by fear, but by the dawning, awful, and magnificent weight of a shared and terrible purpose. The human problem was solved. The problem of survival had just begun.